Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1313 of our daily content grind. We are still in the no face cam arc of the channel, as it's going to take me a bit to get a hold of a new one. Got to research. Also, I paid off my artists this week, so we're a little bit thin, so give it a little bit of time. Get a little bit of time. Once I'm back at the toy shop, we'll be filming there, so it's only going to be a few videos here and there. But today, I decided let's handle a Patreon request, and I will admit I'm kind of cheating on this one because every now and then a request comes in that I feel like I have to modify in order to get something that works for a video. I was given a challenge to either review Cybertron Galvatron, which is a toy I do own. However, with me rearranging my entire workspace, I don't know where it is right now. You keep in mind, I've got like 25 different toy tubs scattered amongst multiple rooms in my home. I don't know exactly where they are. I don't know exactly where Galvatron is at the moment, so I can't quite answer that request right now. The alternative was to review Computron. The trick there is, depending on the version, you are asking for 5 to 7 toys to be reviewed in one video, and that's not going to be good for the reviews, nor is it going to be fair to anyone who only asks for one toy to be reviewed. So I still want to talk Computron, and I still want to kind of cover the spirit of that request. So we're going to do something that I have been wanting to do for a long time. Hasbro and Takara did their versions of Combiner Wars. We had Combiner Wars here in America, but then we had Unite Warriors in Japan. And for the most part, all of the teams on those were comparable. They used the same mold, save for usually one member, whereas Hasbro opted for a little bit more variety, especially, in fear of kids not wanting to get so many of the same similar characters, etc. They opted for a little bit of a change up for the teams, but eventually the real members did get released in one way or another. However, on the Takara side of things, they just went ahead and made everyone correctly, and usually with extensive remolds to get that last character out. But for the most part, the toys are about 80% the same tooling-wise, and then it's just a deco thing. Toy-based for Hasbro, cartoon-based for Takara. But Computron was different. Out of all of them, they have the most differences across all of their members. They have the most deco and mold differences between each other, and it's a radically different set of figures going for radically different things. So the question has always been in my mind, who did it better? So that's what we are going to be looking at today, and we start with the team leaders. So this is going to start with the Combiner War version, then we're going to look at the Takara version. And on the surface, the Hasbro version of Scattershot does not look all that bad. It is forcibly, cramming the character into, what is the Silverbolt / Cyclonus mold that they released at the time. And I'm not crazy about that. I don't mind the different weapon. That's whatever. But I don't know, like, Scattershot has such a unique vehicle mode. It's really upsetting that we don't have, like, a good equivalent, especially in the front, like that gigantic, thick nose cone that unfolds into a cannon. Yeah, I knew they weren't going to try to convey that properly when they announced that this was going to be a retool, but super long skinny front end with a cannon sticking out the front, it's awkward. Now that said, this one is not terrible. I will admit, in the combined mode, it's going to be rough because it's just a lot of repainted parts, but this doesn't look too off. If we take a look at the Takara one, the cartoon accuracy shows through, different shades of red going on, the retooling to the chest is nice, and they've gone for very accurate with the nose cone, which is a stark white all the way through. Now, here's the thing. The way Takara handled this is a very Takara approach, wherein they just try to make the best, cartoon accurate deco with the mold they had to work with. But that said, you take a look at that, and because the nose cone was never going to be correct, the vehicle mode on this was never going to be correct, I'm actually inclined to enjoy the Hasbro one a little bit more. I like that they were a little bit more playful with it, since they couldn't be accurate, and make it actually look good. They opted instead to just try to make it look as unique and interesting as possible. It's a kind of a classics approach to the redeco on this toy, and I think I like the vehicle mode better. Like, I feel like this just kind of looks dumb. Like the gigantic white nose cone trying to emulate the original toy. I feel like it just kind of looks dumb because without the bulk of that nose cone, it's never going to look right. So the retooling is nice, and I noticed the retoolings in the robot mode as well. But as an individual toy, I kind of think I like Hasbro's better. Now, the combiner parts are drastically different. That's a different story, because he is going to form a better set of chest armor, and he's going to form an actual Computron head. But if I'm viewing it as an individual toy thing, my preference might actually be to the Hasbro one. To move on to the team, this one is interesting. So Lightspeed is using essentially the dead end mold, which is streetwise here. And he's just a straight up redeco, which is disappointing. With that said, I feel like this mold is one of the best molds they did in Combiner Wars. So toy wise, play value wise, this one is actually fun to mess with. It's more fun to mess with than this one. Now, this Lightspeed is using the Combiner Wars Wheeljack mold, which does allow it to have the same chest window shape that he had in the original show and toy. Well, more to the show than the toy, honestly. And visually, yes, it looks way better as Lightspeed. But as a toy, play value-wise, this thing's terrible. Like, this is one of the worst molds in Combiner Wars, and it really pained me that they used it for a Technobot. I will admit, it looks fine. Visually, it looks fine. But to play with and mess with, no, it's not as good as this one. But this one is so far off on the deco. It is so far off visually from what he should be. The bright white arms don't make sense. There's no semblance of trying to get his chest from the toy or the show represented on his body. The lack of a retooled head. I mean, ultimately, I think I prefer the Takara one on this one just because visually it strikes so much better, but acknowledge that if you're in it for the toy, if you're in it for play value, this is not going to measure up to this. It's just not, which is unfortunate. Yeah, neither one is perfect, but yeah, I would lean to the Takara one on that one. Afterburner is another one that's a little bit weird to parse, so I don't think either version of Afterburner is all that great, but I do love the amount of retooling they went through in order to make the toy work. So we've got a heavy retool of the groove mold. So looking at it, I really like how the Hasbro one looks. I like that they incorporated that cream white color. I love that it's the proper orange of the original toy. I even like the deco here in the robot mode. I think the black and the orange is a pretty striking color scheme. I like how it looks. Really, it's closer to gunmetal than black. Is it accurate? No. The arms should be completely orange, and part of me wishes they were, but at the same time, I can't look at that and go, that looks bad, that looks wrong. No, he looks cool. I think the toy is like a modern glow up of the original, acknowledging that the original is limited by, G1 budget. I think he looks cool. I kind of like him looking like that. Now, the Takara one is straight up exactly what you would expect out of Takara. The remolded guns are great. The fresh new guns, those are great. But what bugs me on this one is they went cartoon accurate, and not really cartoon accurate. It really depends on the episode you're watching. So if you're looking at Money is Everything as an episode, Afterburner does look orange, or it does look red. So this would be accurate to that depiction. But if you're watching his original appearance in Grimlock's New Brain, he does look more orange than red, which would be my preference, and I will explain why momentarily. More to the point, this just feels plain. Like, if I take a look at the two, this looks way cooler. Like, the orange, black, and the hit of green looks cooler than just stark red and white. You know, this kind of lends into, like, aerial bot color schemes. You know, so, and other things that, like, I like the toy accuracy elements, some parts of, like, you know, like here where, like, the spokes of the motorcycle and the struts, those are actually, like, painted here. They're left black, which is closer to the original toy on this one. You know, and I don't know, in this case, I kind of like that. Now, the trick here is both of them are using the incorrect canopy color. It should be white. It really should be white like the original toy. I don't know why Hasbro went with translucent green of all things. I assume because of the light piping on the eyes, but I would much rather them have just painted the eyes green, because this looks super weird. But still, Afterburner should be orange. He should be. And again, I have other reasons for it, which we'll explain in a bit. But there, I would give Hasbro the nod. I kind of prefer that one. Here's a divisive one no one's going to agree with. The Strafes, I think, are both pretty good at what they are doing. I find both of them a little bit flawed. I do. So again, toy-wise, Hasbro going for toy accuracy with its take on this, retooling it from an aerial bot. You'll excuse me if I forget which one, because the aerial bots were all basically the same toy. I will tell you that the Takara one was retooled from their take on Blastoff that America did eventually get, but it wasn't part of the original assortment. They were doing this weird thing about accuracy at the time, so they didn't want to, like, go through the trouble of retooling an entire, like, space shuttle to mix in with the team, so they just repainted a jet, you know, and called it Blastoff, which was lame. Same reason why we had to wait for a proper groove that was actually a combiner limb. Originally, he was just a Legends class toy that kind of fit on the chest. Now, the point here is, once again, we went for toy accurate and cartoon accurate. If you're going toy accurate, I think this Strafe looks pretty good. Some of the details are off because, you know, they just are. But you know what? I don't think it looks bad. You know, like, I kind of like the orange and burgundy. You know, and the vehicle mode, I think, does look really, really nice. The guns not coming off is a pretty big flaw, especially because this toy does not have accessories beyond that. But I also like how clean this toy ends up looking as a jet. Whereas on the Takara one, the same flaw that Blastoff has, this toy has, which is the robot arms are just kind of there. And I don't like them just kind of stuck out and being very obviously stuck to the side of the vehicle mode. On the Hasbro version, they do blend into the underside way better. Now again, visually, cartoon accurate as you would ever want, and it is a more complex mold because they had to do a lot of work to make Blastoff a thing in this toy line. But does lend him to be a little bit more kibbly and maybe a little bit more fiddly than, say, you know, former aerial bot here. So in this case, I kind of find them equal. Again, it's kind of what you yourself are going for, but I think both of them in their own way do look really, really good. You know, and if I'm going to dock anything, like, I mean, I'll dock this one for not doing enough to push the mold itself away from being an aerial bot, you know, outside of just, like, you know, the obvious retools to the vehicle mode. That's good. Could have used a little bit more, like, you know, a little bit closer tooling of the head, though it is a new head sculpt on this figure. And then on this one, I really think Takara could have done a better job on the vehicle mode. Not only the arms that are exposed, but also the fact that the front end is so rounded, when in the cartoon, it is a very hard angled fighter jet. So, like, the roundness kind of comes from, like, a residual engineering bit of the, you know, the fact that he used to be Blastoff. It's not using the same parts, but they kind of have to fit the same shapes, if that makes sense. It's still not the best of looks. I think for as much work as they did to make this toy, I really think Takara could have done better. So I kind of put them on equal level. I think both of them have their flaws. I think both of them have their advantages. Do we even have to talk about this one? Do we even have to talk about what they did to poor Nose Cone It's a straight repaint of Brawl, but now you just flip his barrel around and attach a drill instead of a gun barrel, and that's your drill tank, which is just a tank going backwards, and it does not look good. And it also helps that this doesn't help that this is the worst mold in Combiner Wars. Like without a shadow of a doubt, this toy is awful, absolutely awful. But that said, Takara's is beautiful. Takara's nose cone is absolutely beautiful. I mean, for starters, it's the Rook mold, which I think we've, at this point as a fandom, I think we can just universally agree as a fandom, this is the best mold, at least deluxe-wise, that came out of Combiner Wars. This is a fantastic toy, Combiner or not. I loved this design and this figure. And then you go and retool it into nose cone, and it looks really good. You go and give him a ton of accessories. You give him this massive drill and all the retoolings to make him a good-looking drill tank. This toy is closer to a Voyager. When you look at all the bulk and parts he comes with, he is absurd. And, you know, he's like, if Rook is already the best deluxe out of Combiner Wars, Nose Cone might be the best toy in the line, regardless of size. So yeah, no doubt Takara nailed that one. Now, on paper, Takara might be a little bit ahead here, but I'm going to push it a little bit because there are advantages to the Hasbro one we haven't even accounted for, and we can't compare it to Takara because only Hasbro came with Scrounge. Remember, all the Combiner War guys came with their own Legends class mascot. This one pins onto the arm as kind of a makeshift satellite dish, which is kind of a lesser integration, but it is adding to the play factor. And Scrounge is a character who never had a transforming toy before or since. So it's super cool to see that he actually got a figure. And I think he works well as this kind of like pseudo Technobot. I think he fits into the team nicely. Oh, and he brings his partner Cybax to the fold as well. I believe this is based on a even more obscure character, Boltax, from the original Marvel UK run. Crazy obscure cuts here to bulk out the Technobots. But you recall, he works as his own little mini transformer. He has a Target Master mode. He combines with Scrounge in vehicle mode. They both combined a Computron. This is adding a lot of playability to the Hasbro version. I think the playability factor should not be understated when it comes to Hasbro's take on Computron. It's so much easier to just dismiss that version because, oh, well, you know, they didn't do any extra retooling that Takara did. Well, Hasbro works on a different budget. Takara has basically as much as they need to make that toy look as good as possible for collectors, whereas Hasbro was working with a budget of, how are we supposed to get out a good set of Technobots for this money? That's why, you know, Brawl just ends up being like a retool, like a straight up repaint with one new weapon accessory. That's how we get that nose cone. You know, that's how, you know, Lightspeed is just a repaint, because on a budgetary level, they were working with what they had, and they were trying to put together the best Computron they could, given the limitations. Whereas with this, you know, and that's kind of the reason why you saw the individual Scattershot released, because that helped them recoup costs they needed to get all the Technobots out by getting that retool out and, like financially covered. You have to account for things like that when you're comparing these two. But there's even more. So, like, here's the Hasbro version of Computron. And I actually like how Scrounge and Cybax balance out the tall shoulder elements, you know, and they have like a similar bulk to what, to what Afterburner is presenting there on his side. It weirdly balances each other out. The big advantage you see here, admittedly, yeah, now you see that the tooling on the chest and head, it's still just Superion repainted, as I just explained why that is. But Hasbro actually manages to include the dedicated fists and the dedicated feet, which give him not only a better look, but also a better balance. These feet worked way better for keeping a combiner balanced than the hand-foot guns. Takara still use the hand-foot guns, which I think hurts the overall look of the figure as well as its stability. Now, granted, if you like a combiner that is all, solid in color scheme, and unified in the robot mode, and I do like that from time to time, the Takara one is absolutely going to be your thing. And then you've got all the added retooling. The chest is the correct Computron chest. The head is Computron's head. So visually, yes, this is going to represent better. My issue with this is nose cone, but it's not really nose cone. The issue here is Afterburner, but nose cone highlights it because everyone else on the team is predominantly shades of red and white. It makes nose cone look like this kind of like vestigial limb almost, where like one of his legs just ended up really rusted and corroded for some reason, or like we're borrowing this Technobot from some other team. We don't know where he came from. You look at the Hasbro version. This is where an orange Afterburner is so important, because to put that on that right arm balances out the browns and yellows of the left leg, and now he looks a lot more balanced. Now he doesn't look as unified color scheme wise, but we are adding enough orange into the color scheme to bring nose cone in and make him look like less of a weird addition. So I like it for that. I like that it adds that level of balance to the team. And even when you see the team as a set of 5, you could still say that because nose cone stands out like a sore thumb. An orange Afterburner prevents that and actually helps him integrate into the team properly. I like that. I like that a lot. So you take a look at all this, there's a lot to consider here. It's very, very hard. And it's always going to come down to personal preference. At the end of the day, you pin me down and force me to choose one. Yes, I'm probably going to go with the Takara one. There is a reason why I have sold off the American Computron twice now. But that said, I still think with the limitations they had to work with, Hasbro put together a really, really good set of toys. Ones with more play value right out of the box than the Takara ones, just because they left in more features and included more figures. And also, there's deco choices that work better for me in the long run. I like both of them a lot, but I think both are really far off from my ideal. I think my ideal would almost be kind of like the vehicle deco of the Hasbro Scattershot with the new parts of the Takara. It would be Hasbro's Afterburner with white instead of green. It would be probably Takara's Strafe, but with harder edges, like the American version. Like the cleaner tooling of the American version. Obviously, the nose cone on Takara is perfect. And then for the light speed, I need it to be that dead end mold. That I need it to be that cleaner, better action figure. And then just deco it better, retool it better. Somewhere in the middle here, there's a perfect blend, Give me the ability to connect scrounge to the shoulder, even if it's the Takara version. Give me the hands and feet from the Hasbro version so I don't have these ugly hand-foot guns laying around everywhere. That kind of thing. So, there's a perfect Computron in a middle ground here that I don't think either of them hit. But I do appreciate that they both go for such different things that both are still very, very enjoyable. So, today I'm leaving it to you in the comments section below. Which one is the better one? Do you want the toy accurate, more playable one? Or do you want the more united color scheme and more cartoon accurate one? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.